If you say the wrong thing. Alright, who wrote this? If step 2 is packet is 14.
Yeah, you can just say anything related to the
Charles
information,
Hall.
right?
Yeah.
Which is pretty silly.
What number 2 are you?
Tech.
And
17.
Who's back with it?
Charles Hall and friends.
Awesome.
15 minutes ahead.
What team are
Hey, no, Gordon Orsoff, I think, submitted some questions.
there are a number of
Engaged
packets, yes, in this tournament that are basically editor's packets, like that were submitted but became editor's packets. They were unusable.
Yep.
A lot more sorry than I expected.
No, it's okay.
Hey, a lot more than I used,
You
actually.
were not one of the
Yeah.
We just had a bunch of
Like,
false hard questions, that's all.
It's not, like, if you've been writing, like, if you've edited for a CL and you submit a terrible.
I will say this, and I will say it also publicly on the forums, which is that, like, if people played the version of the tournament that was actually submitted, it would be like literally twice as hard.
That's totally believable.
Yeah.
It's the game theory whole solution, like, you write a hard packet, everyone else will be easy, and everyone.
Yeah, if we learn
Well,
about
it's,
20
I mean, like,
minutes,
people submitted, like, one of the packs that was submitted was like, they would have like 10 toss-ups go dead, like, easily, maybe more than 10. Like, but between good teams. It was pretty bad.
I just don't know what that toss-up was.
Before
it
but
became
it
Pro.
sounded so much like Pro.
Oh, no, he
No, he said
it
he said
was
that.
something box.
Yeah,
the
something
whatever
box.
box, yeah.
Okay.
So that story.
But just like
Yeah, I think that was like originally a toss-up on like a really obscure post.
Yeah, the something box.
hearing someone like wail.
Okay.
Goes to sleep sounds like Pro.
You ever pay your games?
Are you really gonna take that guess in this tournament?
I was saying I wasn't going to. That's what I did.
Okay. Anyway, we'll go ahead and start reading. Toss-up one.
Have you ever names and stuff?
I already have your names.
That's cool.
Toss-up one. In the middle of this painting, a small water wheel pours into a pool, which then diverges into 2 waterfalls. This painting is on a wall whose window looks out onto the Cortile del Belvedere. Ennius sits on the left of this work, while resting his quill-holding hand on a tree and copying down the dictated words of a man with an outstretched right arm, who's flanked by Virgil and Dante. A woman in this work's foreground who holds a lyre is
Apotheosis of him.
that is, what's that?
Apotheosis of him.
That's incorrect.
That's
Not.
too easy.
Right. 5. It could have been, but it's not. Is identified by a scroll in her hand with the name Sappho visible. The central character plays an anachronistic lyra da braccio, while 9 strings instead of 7, with 9 strings instead of 7, possibly symbolizing his 9 companions. This painting is located on the north wall of the room that contains La Disputa, the cardinal virtues, and the school of Athens. Return points in Strappi al fresco in the Stanza della Signatura that depicts Apollo surrounded by poets at the mountain home of the Muses.
Sorry.
I would have made the same.
Apollo lost right
No,
Parnassus.
just Parnassus. Okay.
There's a woman with a light. And Dante.
Here is the next toss-up. One account of this event was written in 2010 by Paul Hacker, who headed the consulate in a major city in the country in which this event took place. One of the masterminds behind this action split from the PAV party after being replaced as its head by Kornegorski and founded the HZDS party, while the other man behind this action was the leader of the ODS party. The mechanism for dividing property following this action was called
The Velvet Divorce.
That's right.
Is that 15?
That's 10. Your bonus, the future combat systems and expeditionary fighting vehicle programs were canceled due to this amendment for 10 points each. Name this amendment, which requires notifying Congress if a weapons project cost per unit goes 15% over budget. If that cost overrun is over 25%, the project is canceled unless the Secretary of Defense asks for a waiver. It's not a constitution.
What you got?
It's the non-McCurdy amendment. This fighter jet produced by Lockheed Martin for the Joint Strike Fighter program has repeatedly breached the non-McCurdy amendment. This per unit cost has risen from less than $65 million to over $200 million.
F-35.
In 1981, this head of the Senate Armed Forces Committee compared the non-McCurdy amendment to closing the gate after the horses galloped off into the boondocks. This Texas Republican chaired the commission which investigated the Iran-Contra scandal.
This is Iran.
Tower,
Is it Tower? I think it's
Tower.
Yeah. That is going.
Yeah.
Here is toss-up 3. The onyx embolic agent contains this substance mixed with ethylene vinyl alcohol copolymer. Mixing a 10 to 20% solution of this substance in Eagle's minimal essential medium is commonly used to freeze stem cells. After being activated with a carbodiamide, this compound is used to activate primary and secondary alcohols in the Fisner-Moffat oxidation. A derivative of this compound often shows a residual 2.5 ppm quintuplet peak. That very viscous deuterated D6 derivative is often used instead of a deuterated chloroform to dissolve NMR samples. Both oxalyl chloride and the substance are used to transform alcohols into aldehydes in a variety of the Koryakin reaction known as the Swarin oxidation. This compound is added to, that's one over here.
That was fine, right? DMSO.
That's right.
That is, yeah, that's right. Thank you.
I was trying to.
No tricks.
Not this time.
Your bonus. He chose Athena over Poseidon as patron of Athens. Each named this mythological founder of Athens, who had a serpent tail instead of legs. His daughter's first Cecrops was said to have been born in this manner. When Hephaestus' semen landed on Gaia, other people born like this included Avenor and Erechtheus, another Athenian ruler. Because of Erechtheus' prowess as a charioteer, Zeus is said to have placed him in the stars as this constellation, which is alternately associated with Myrtilus.
Sure.
Yeah, I
I don't know. Translations are called.
What's
Charioteer.
horse like?
What do you got?
Subject.
Auriga.
Oh, yeah, chariot.
That makes sense.
You got 20 points. Toss-up. As a child, this novel's protagonist is told by his grandfather about the Swiss radical Babette of Interlaken, after which he has an eroticized dream about her. This novel's protagonist works with the explosives expert Minuzzo to sink the ship of Ippolito Nievo on behalf of the Cavalier Bianco. That grandfather also introduces this novel's protagonist to the theory of Abbe Barduel, which later influenced his denunciation of the Expedition of the Thousand. Father Bergamaschi pays this novel subject to work with Leo Taxil to create anti-Masonic literature. Rebadango teaches this novel's protagonist his trade, which he describes as the creation of documents that shouldn't have existed. This novel's protagonist thinks he may, that should have existed. This novel's protagonist thinks he may also be the Abbe della Piccola and sets a fictional name, that's 2-4 over here.
Fox Hunter.
Sorry. I didn't know whether people were going to answer that.
I read the first half of that.
It was submitted.
That's
It's like,
yeah,
okay,
that's
fine.
kind of
Why not? Your bonus.
ordinance for that.
This newspaper was the subject of the work The Kingdom and the Power, which one review described as the first media book portraying the inner workings of a media establishment. Each named this newspaper, whose leadership by Arthur Hawks Sulzberger was described in that work. This paper uses the motto, all the news that's fit to print. New York Times. The Kingdom and the Power is written by this former New York Times journalist who wrote about the stresses affecting the title Sager in the Esquire magazine article, Frank Sinatra has a cold.
That's
Starts with a G, is that right?
I don't remember.
What do you got?
It's
Gay Talese.
yeah,
Talese also wrote about how fame declines in the article, The Silent Season of the Hero, a work about this person.
The what of the hero?
Silent Season.
The Silent Season of the Hero.
So it's a baseball player, probably.
Gary?
Gary.
Should have got you.
Chosen poorly.
Indeed you have. Here is toss 5. This nation celebrates days in which there is a full moon with Poya Day. Robert Knox's 17th century imprisonment in this modern-day nation helped inspire the novel Robinson Crusoe. The Mudaliar caste was created in this nation when it was under colonial rule, building upon the earlier Govigama caste, which still dominates politics here today. A fortress in this country was built by Kassapa, who usurped his father, Datusena's crown from his half-brother Mogalana. That fortress is at Sigiriya, and its creation was told in the Mahabhamsa. This nation's central region is home to the Temple of the Tooth, which
It's from Sri Lanka.
Yeah, that's close.
This disease can be caused by the Japonica mansoni or Haematobium species of a certain organism, and those causative agents commonly use freshwater snails as hosts. For example, teach name this parasitic disease that can manifest as an acute fever named for Katayama, like the liver fluke, and the fish tapeworm. Its causative agents are often killed using Parashiquantel.
Schistosomiasis.
The causative agents of schistosomiasis are members of this phylum on sequential platforms.
Platinum.
The anti-helminthic albendazole can cause this unfortunate side effect in which a bone marrow smear shows stem cells almost completely replaced by fat. It can also be caused by parvovirus B19 in sickle cell patients.
I don't know, like jelly syndrome.
It's aplastic anemia. 20 points.
Plastic or plastic?
Aplastic. Toss of 6. first chorus in this play describes the images on the armor and shield of Achilles and is often called the Achilles Ode. In a mock heroic allusion to the scene in the Odyssey where the Eurycleia recognizes Odysseus, one character in this play is revealed to have a scar on his forehead from chasing a doe. The protagonist of this...
Libation verse?
That's incorrect.
That's how.
Sorry, dog.
That's how Electra.
The protagonist of this play parodies an earlier work on the same subject by mocking the idea of recognizing a family member by a footprint, a piece of clothing, or a lock of his hair. This play's main character tells her mother that she has had a son, even though she's married to a peasant from Mycenae, who has respected her desire to remain chaste. At the end of this play, the Dioscuri appear and tell two characters to atone for their crime of pushing a sword down a woman's throat. Its basic plot is similar to the Libation Bearers, and both begin with the title character reuniting with a friend of Pylades and vowing revenge for 10 points in Euripides' play, in which Odysseus and Clytemnestra are murdered by Orestes and the titled woman. Yes. Okay, the answer is Electra.
That clue is clearly not unique.
I don't know, dude. I didn't write it.
Unfortunate.
But so it goes. Description acceptable.
Here you go.
A group led by the pseudonymous Leap Elder opposes this doctrine. This doctrine was first introduced under the leadership of Nathan Homer Knorr. One document supporting this doctrine cites Americo Valerio to state that the practice it condemns can transfer criminal tendencies and sexual perversion. This doctrine is textually supported by Leviticus 17:15, which states that one must wash one's garments after eating dead animals. Paul Blizzard, or Blizzard perhaps, suffered disfellowshipping after refusing to adhere to this doctrine. This doctrine covers both allogenic and autologous methods and is commonly enforced by a card referring to a durable power of attorney. There are 10 points named this doctrine by which members of a certain religion refuse it.
Jehovah's Witnesses refusing blood transfusion.
Definitely true.
That's exactly right. Your bonus. This formulation simplifies the more general Mueller calculus, although it only applies to completely polarized light. We have to teach name this formulation that treats polarized light as 2x1 vectors and optical elements as 2x2 matrices. Unlike the Mueller calculus, this formulation considers the electric field and also light waves relative phases. This is called the Jones calculus. Mueller calculus makes use of this physicist's namesake four-component vectors that can characterize light of any polarization. This man is perhaps better known for co-developing fluid mechanics equations that reduce to Euler's equations for inviscid flow. Stokes.
Oh, right.
While the first Stokes parameter represents the intensity of the light, the other three form a Cartesian coordinate system on this object that describes the possible polarization states for light of a given power.
Like a black body?
This is called a Poincare sphere. Got no points. Next topic. This company's vice president for international operations, Sidney Rezo, was kidnapped and murdered in 1982. In 2001, this company was sued over human rights violations committed by members of the Indonesian military hired as security personnel in Aceh. This company undermines the World Bank's loans to Chad, which were conditional on using revenues to fight property, by paying Idris Deby enough money to back out of them. Those incidents were related in Steve Cole's book about this company, Private Empire, which also noted how its current CEO, Rex Tillerson, partially Exxon. Your bonus. This work was made an enormous amount of money for producer John Rich, who I guess appropriately named, for 10 points each. Named this ballad opera by John Gay about McKeith, a highwayman who avoids hanging after the narrator announces that audience demand a happy ending. That's the Beggar's Opera. The Beggar's Opera begins with this character singing through all the employments of life. Each neighbor abuses his brother, whore and rogue they call husband and wife. This professional thief catcher plots McKeith's execution after his daughter announces that she's married McKeith.
Is this perhaps back in life?
It is not. It's Mr. Peachum. While in Newgate, McKeith sings, and if rich men like us were to swing to within the land such numbers to string upon this place's tree, referring to its massive gallows. Until 1783, this village was the main site of public executions in England. So you got, all right, it's Tyburn. Mac the Knife would actually be.
That was an American welcome to promise. For this tournament.
What's that?
The timer tree, as we mentioned about that earlier.
What was it?
No. In another-
From previous
Different.
round.
Oh, was it? I don't even remember.
So I wrote that question.
Really, we didn't remember either.
After one inhabitant of this place was exiled, the servants responsible for exiling her fashioned a heart made out of tree sap to lie about her death. The guards of a garden located here were killed after a group of leafcutter ants managed to sneak past them. A house in this location was burned without damaging the inhabitants by a group of people who transformed into humans from catfish. A message ordering one to
It's just Shivalba.
we're being all coy and shit. You figure this out. This religion split into Ketu, JJ, and Bantu branches or nations for Tempo teaching. This syncretic religion combines Yoruba, Fon, Bantu, and Catholic beliefs, and whose name translates to dance in honor of the gods. Its ancestral deities are known as Orishas. That's Orishas.
So it's like Candomblé or the other
I
one.
think Candomblé.
Okay, Candomblé.
Like Umbanda and Quimbanda, which were once termed Macumba, Candomblé is practiced mainly in this country, the city of Brazil. Yes, these objects are often used by Candomblé priests to select verses to read based on whether their slit is facing up or down. In Yoruba religion, spirits respond to questions by influencing how these objects fall.
Like pine seeds?
Pine cones.
Seeds.
These are cowrie shells.
Okay. Oh, yeah, that's right.
You got 20.
Pine nuts is what I was trying to say. But it's cover shells.
Hey, here's Tasso. Polymorphisms like codon 322 of this protein distinguish the YT blood groups. A version of this enzyme found in Torpedo californica was used to deduce its crystal structure. This enzyme uses its cold Q-tail subunit to tramerize. Inhibition of this enzyme is used to reverse the effects of the anesthetic ropuronium and becuronium. This enzyme is reversibly inhibited by edrophonium, and inhibitors of this enzyme in eye drop form are used to treat glaucoma. Organophosphate toxicity inhibits this enzyme, which can be regenerated by pralidoxime and inhibited by neostigmine, which is commonly used to treat myasthenia gravis. Autoinjectors containing atropine are used in cases when this enzyme is inhibited by VX, sarin, or other nerve agents.
Acetylcholinesterase.
That is a correct.
That's the enzyme that goes with all that.
Things that bring Here's a bonus. The narrator of this poem studies the monstrous ribs of the title structure, built on the site where Roman magistrates judged a foreign people for 10.2. Identify this poem, whose narrator concludes that he too will someday create something as beautiful as the title Basilica from an unyielding heaviness.
Fuck, I read this.
What? Is it like Ruins of a Great House? I don't know what's happening.
I'm pretty sure that has nothing.
What do you got?
Ruins of Great House.
Notre Dame was written by this Russian activist who wrote of a political leader whose thick fingers are bulky and fat like liveates, and his accurate words are as heavy as weights. This is Stalin epigram. Andel Stalin used this adjective to refer to Stalin's torso in the Stalin epigram. This adjective alludes to Stalin's Georgian ancestry.
No, it's not Caucasian.
This
is torso.
It's a torso.
Caucasian for me. Ossetian.
Ossetian, that's right.
Is that 10 or 20?
10.
That was 10. Toss. Should we go check time? At half, the score is 125 to 50. Okay. Toss below. This book argues against the title locations using the metaphor of pulling a drowning person out of a lake, teaching him to use the bicycle, and then putting him back in the lake. This work also notes in the section subtitled Some Notes on the Vicissitudes of the Tinkering Trades that the operation of the title locations was reminiscent of how 19th century craftsmen operated. This book describes how people who enter the title locations undergo a process of reconstruction.
It's just a silence.
That's what it is. 50. Wait, I think you're waking down. After the Battle of Cannae, this man dispatched 1,500 men to protect Rome from Hannibal's victorious forces for Tempotiche. In this man, known as the Sword of Rome, who won the Spolia Optima for slaying the Insubrian king Brutamarcus in single combat.
Okay, so. Yeah, sure.
Manlius.
Say again?
Manlius.
No, it's Marcus Claudius Marcellus.
That's right.
During the Second Punic War, Marcellus commanded troops to besiege this city, which had declared for Carthage under the leadership of the magistrates Hippocrates and Epicydes. Archimedes was killed when Roman troops on the capture in 212 BCE. That's right. A long era of Sicilian loyalty to Rome ended with the death in 215 BCE of this longtime tyrant of Syracuse, who was succeeded by a son who ruled for less than a year before being assassinated.
Okay.
Where arrow 1?
What do you got?
Arrow 2.
Yeah. 20. Awesome. 12. Charles Simic analyzed these artworks in his book, The Historic Alchemy. One of these works depicts a white cockatoo surrounded by a grid of similar watch faces. Another of these works depicts a girl suspended by strings against a blue background as she holds a red bead on a string above a mountain and is named for Tilly Losh. A group of them, inspired by Emily Dickinson's poetry, moves toward the Blue Peninsula, while another one uses plastic ice cubes to evoke the jewelry of Marita Leone. A spiral appears below a copy of Anguissola's portrait of Massimiliano Stampa, which is crisscrossed with black lines. In one of a series of them, their art is called Medici Slot Machine. These assemblages often include...
These are just combines?
They are not. These assemblages often include play pipes, images of outer space, and references to ballerinas, and were created from found materials in the basement of their artist house in Queens. Potemkin these enclosed glass-covered artworks created by Joseph Cornell.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, this kind.
Time. These are called boxes. They're Cornell. All right. Toss up 13. This work's 7th section argues that the only philosophical problem concerning the relationship of mind and matter are the linguistic problems of defining certain symbols which denote logical constructions in terms of symbols which denote sense contents. Accordingly, that section of this book claims that the self is a logical construction out of the sense experiences which constitute its actual and possible sense history. The final section of this work uses the difference between the sentences the author of Hamlet wrote Hamlet and Shakespeare wrote Hamlet to explain the errors of monism. In this work's 6th chapter, the author puts forth an emotivist view of ethics, arguing that the sentence stealing money is wrong merely expresses personal disapproval. This work's 1st chapter is dedicated to the illumination of metaphysics and proposes that the significance of statements should be subject to the verification of
Elimination of metaphysics? Yes.
Your bonus. Kaddish Poznan's son Pato disappears during the Dirty War in this author's first novel, The Ministry of Special Cases, for 10 points each. Ames, contemporary American author, who used Stalin's Night of the Murdered Poets as the basis for The 27th Man, a short story published in his collection for the relief of unbearable urges.
Who's a contemporary short story writer? Marley, Saunders.
What you got?
Saunders.
No, it's Nathan Englander. Englander wrote a short story titled What We Talk About When We Talk About This Person. This friend of me, Dees, wrote a series of letters to her pen pal Juanito Magan, and she died in Bergen Belsen.
Yeah, I skipped that.
Yeah, right.
This novel by Philip Roth is narrated by a young Nathan Zuckerman, who comes to believe that Anne Frank is alive and going by the name Amy Willett. It focuses on Zuckerman's relationship with his mentor, the old writer I.E. Lawnoff.
It's Ghost Rider.
It's not great.
Yeah,
No.
is it?
I think it's Ghost Rider.
What do you got?
No, something else, I think Ghost.
Ghost Rider.
That's right.
Okay.
14. This scientist's namesake functions extend throughout the entire bulk sample, so for practical applications, they are often Fourier transformed into linear functions, which are localized. A transition region named for this physicist arises when magnetic spins rotate around the in-plane axis rather than around the z-axis, as with a similar region named for Neal. This physicist gives his name to the most general geometric representation of a two-state quantum. Wow. That's right.
Round for Brian.
What's that?
It's a good round for Brian.
Yeah, it was 5 round. That was 10 points. And so followed by composers who brought American folk song into classical music for example, teach. Henry Cowell claimed that the third movement of this composer's modernist string quartet was the greatest ever written for such an ensemble. She collaborated with Carl Sandburg, setting several of his poems to music, and compiled a number of books intended to teach folk songs at the elementary level.
It's Dorothy Taubman.
It's not okay. You say you're
Taubman?
It's Ruth Seeger.
Oh.
This composer profusely quoted folk hymn and patriotic tunes like Columbia, Gem of the Ocean, in pieces like his Holiday Symphony. He also called for the player to hit the keys of the piece of wood in his Concords and Ives. Ives quoted the hymn Bethany both in his Unfinished Universe Symphony and in this piece, which usually requires 2 conductors to perform due to its incredibly complex polyrhythms.
What?
Who is this?
Ives, yeah. It's a polyrhythmic Ives. Generally with Anderson Kevin.
That's not correct. It's this 4th symphony.
I mean, that has polyrhythms too, so.
I don't know. Just read them.
I'm not saying I was right. I'm clearly wrong. I just try to guess.
Like I said, I don't know anything about this, so. Toss of 15. This ruler had to surrender most of the territory he won during one war by the terms of the Treaty of Oliva, and after reconquering it, he would later lose that same territory again in the Treaty of Saint-Germain-en-Laye. Many of this ruler's policies, especially with regard to agriculture, were strongly influenced by the time he spent at the court of Frederick Henry of Orange, whose daughter Louise Henriette he married. This ruler attempted to maintain neutrality during the First Northern War.
Franz Joseph.
That's incorrect. This ruler attempted to maintain neutrality during the First Northern War between Sweden and Poland, but after his territories were occupied by Swedish armies under Charles X. Gustav, Charles X Gustav, he was forced to lead his army at the Battle of Warsaw, where his performance earned him territorial concessions to remain a Swedish ally. This ruler remained allied to Louis XIV until it became clear that Louis would not help him win Pomerania, at which point this man joined the Grand Alliance. It was with a victory over the Swedes in 1675 that this ruler gained his famous sobriquet. For 10 points, identified his father Frederick I, who consolidated the Prussian state during his rule from 1640 to 1688.
The Great Elector,
Prominent.
it's Frederick William.
Yeah. That's correct. The number of arguments that these words take is known as their valence for 10 points each. Name these words whose intransitive form lacks a direct object.
Verbs.
In languages with this property, the subject of a transitive verb differs from the subject of an intransitive verb.
Okay, these are ergative, absolutive. Right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yes.
In English, a phenomenon similar to ergativity can be seen in the way this suffix is placed on the end of some verbs in order to turn them into nouns and make them the objects of transitive verbs. The suffix comes from the French past participle form.
No, A-N-T. A-N-T.
No, it's the EE suffix.
Oh,
That's how I read it.
okay.
That was a fine effort.
Okay, that's 20 points. Task 16. The title character of one of this author's novels becomes an abolitionist and moves to Bleeding, Kansas with her husband Thomas Newton, whose murder by border ruffians inspires her to disguise herself as a man and track down his killers. In another of this author's novels, Dr. Lionel Gift conspires with Arlen Martin on a scheme to mine gold in the less virgin cloud forest in Costa Rica, which is opposed by Chairman X. This author of The All True Travels and Adventures of Liddy Newton wrote a novel which follows the life of Margaret Asgier's daughter from birth to death, as well as an academic farce, which opens by describing an experiment conducted on a 700-pound pig named Earl Butts. After writing The Greenlanders, she used Zebulon County, Iowa, as a setting for a novel inspired by King Lear, in which Larry Cook bequeaths his farm to his 3 daughters.
Smiley.
Prince Shotoku was inspired by this system to develop the Honden Shinju system as part of the Taika reforms, so 10 points each. Named the system of land distribution popular in the early and mid-Tang dynasty. Under this system, every able-bodied man received 40 mu of land, mu perhaps, or mu, whatever, of land. So women received less.
This was in the Tang Dynasty? So that's the
It sounded like a Japanese thing.
What
Baja.
This is called the equal field system, or the Juntian Judu.
Shit. I'm sorry.
The equal field system was first implemented by Emperor Zhao Ren of this dynasty, which was founded by the Tuoba clan of the Xianbei ethnic group. This dynasty united northern China in the 400s AD.
That's in the 400s.
What do you got?
Joe.
Okay, it's the Northern Wei. Another ruler of a kingdom called Wei was this emperor and military leader who participated in a campaign against Dong Zhuo and was defeated at the Battle of Red Cliffs. Yeah.
I guess we get
Okay. You got me. Toss of 17. A 1972 paper by Melvin Page and Patrick Bennett analyzes a note carved into a pair of sandals by this man, which mentions the Englishman Mr. Ward, to examine the controversy over whether he spoke Arabic. This man fought alongside his father in attacks of revolt against Manua Sera. After acquiring financing from Tarya Japan, this man went on a 12-year expedition around Maniema, then established a new base at Kasango. After attacking the Tabwa over a dispute with Chief Nisama, he began investing his money in clove plantations. Agents of this man escorted Henry Stanley's expedition down to the Lualaba River, and he made an 1882 deal to act as the local agent of the Sultan of Zanzibar.
Keep it tip.
That's right.
That's exciting.
Interesting. Here's your bonus. A March 2015 article described how a fracking fluid made from a polymer of this compound could be expanded and shrunk when needed, reducing the volume of fluid necessary for chemical each. Name this compound, whose 3 varieties are formed by treating allyl chloride with ammonia, after which the result is distilled. It's allylamine. The experimental fracking fluid works by forming one of these substances which behave like solids despite being made primarily out of water. They're similar to other substances which behave like solids despite being primarily made out of oil or air.
Emulsions.
What you got?
Emulsions.
Hydrogel.
Hydrogel.
Hydrogels can be used to encapsulate quantum dots. Iconotype quantum dot uses this element's selenide, and this poisonous element is also paired with nickel oxide. These rechargeable batteries.
Arsenic.
No, nickel oxide.
Cadmium.
Cadmium. The BHT algorithm uses this algorithm to make only big O of n to the 1/3 queries to solve the collision problem. A key component of this algorithm is a function that returns 1 if a query is a solution and 0 if it is not, which is implemented by an oracle. This algorithm contains a namesake process that should be iterated pi over 4 times the square root of n over m times to maximize correctness, where n is the number of entries and m is the number of solutions. This algorithm starts by considering a uniform superposition of all possible values, a namesake diffusion operator is iteratively applied, and then a measurement is made to determine the solution with high probability. If the oracle detects a solution, the oracle qubit is flipped. This algorithm uses logarithmic space and sees a quadratic speedup over the optimal classical algorithm as it runs a big O of square root of n time. Template's name is quantum searching algorithm.
This like Shores maybe?
It is not.
Gross.
Say again?
Gross.
Oh, it's Grover's!
Grover.
I should have stolen that buzz from you. This is why I do that.
You're still like,
Huh?
still not
Distracted
got
guy.
this, yes.
Yeah. All right. Here's
Every
topic
possible thing.
Here's topic. You gotta make it into the content. There's a lot of exciting things in there.
You're drinking a bad one, you're gonna never.
All right, shut up. A piece of this type is the penultimate movement of Thomas Tallis's Dorian service, occurring just before the Nunc Dimittis. They give their name to a series of 95 fugues, each written on one of the 8 tones by Johann Pachelbel. A piece of this type in G minor by Vivaldi uses 2 oboes only in the penultimate movement and is numbered RV 610. Another piece of this type originally contained extra insertions like the hymns Vom Himmel hoch and Virga Jesse Floruit, and was written for the composer's first Christmas as Thomas Cantor in Leipzig. 10 years after the premiere of that piece, the composer took out the extra hymns and transposed the piece from E flat to D. The text of these pieces is often divided into verses such as Et exultavit and Sicut locutus, and is taken from Luke chapter 1 and is often called Mary's Song of Thanksgiving. The template's name is Marian Canticles, often performed during Vespers or Evensong, whose title comes from the incipit, My soul doth magnify the Lord.
Gloria.
No.
Magnificat? That's right, yeah.
All right.
I was clearly just guessing.
Yeah. I should have
He collected his musings in Novels in 3 Lines and was a defendant in the trial of the 30 for Template teach, named French art critic who championed new impressionist movement. Paul Signac's Opus 217 against the enamel of a background rhythmic with beats and angles, tones, and tints depicts this man's goatee and shows him carrying a top hat and a cane extending a flower.
Yeah. A little bit on me.
What do you got?
Agreed.
Do you know this?
Felix Daniel.
That's right.
What is that?
Felix Fenelon. Another defendant of the trial of the 30 was this artist who painted Fenelon at Manzas. His other works include the Croix Saint-Michel and Notre Dame and the Execution of Marlene.
Yeah,
Well, we certainly don't, so let's.
All right, it's Maximilian Luce. Fenelon most notably promoted the work of this artist who painted bathers at Asnières and depicted his most famous work hanging on the wall in the models.
It seemed too easy. I knew an answer.
So you guessed mad?
I knew an answer, so what's
All right,
right?
quiet. Last toss-up. The preface to this book's second edition responds to James Smith's critique that it lacks the judgment of value by noting that there's an implicit argument for the quality of the poems this author discusses in detail, among them Pope's Epistle 2 to a Lady and Herbert's The Sacrifice. Its last section delves into psychology and repeats Freud's claim that when an ancient Egyptian saw a baby, he at once thought of an old man. Its author argues that Keats's Ode on Melancholy demonstrates that a force in the poet's mind must have wanted to go to Lethe very much if it took 4 negatives in the first line to stop them. Opening with a discussion of how pure sound and atmosphere impact understanding, this book posits that features like double grammar and alternative meanings are valuable tools in analyzing literature.
7 times I've indicated. That's what it is. That's it.
Alright, here's your bonus. This man may have fictionalized his affair with Victor Hugo's wife Adele in his only novel, Volupte, for Templates each. named this 19th century French literary critic whose many literary portraits analyze biographical details from the author's life in order to interpret an author's works.
French literature.
What do you got?
Oh,
Oh, it's Saint-Beuve. This author attacks Saint-Beuve's views about literature in his books Against Saint-Beuve. His only novel ends with a party thrown by the princess of Grimalkin in the section Time Regaining. Proust's essay on reading discusses his translation of his author's book, Sesame and Lily. Another of the author's is. All right, that's 20. The final score is 271.
All right.
200.